You're listening to Season 3 of Celebrating Simple Life, the podcast. I'm Kimberly Evans, and I've been planning events, workshops, retreats, and socials for almost 20 years. After working with so many incredible clients and entrepreneurs, and personally experiencing hardship in life and business, I've discovered how powerful our mindset and purpose is in creating a life of joy and celebration while having a whole lot of fun along the way. Join me with a coffee or cocktail as I connect with inspiring leaders, entrepreneurs, tastemakers, and extraordinary people as they share their journey in life and business and how they are striving to live a life of purpose. Your fears and beliefs in yourself will be transformed as you work towards creating the best version of yourself from the inside out. You're in good company. Cheers to Celebrating Simple Life. Today on Celebrating Simple Life, the podcast, I'm chatting with AmyK Hutchens. Based out of San Diego, she is an international award-winning speaker, Amazon best-selling author, and has over 19 years experience training, coaching, and consulting with clients such as Starbucks Canada, Expedia, IBM, and John Paul Mitchell Systems, and being featured on numerous TV and radio networks including Bloomberg, NBC, and ABC. AmyK travels the world helping leaders become master communicators so they can lead, innovate, sell, and collaborate more effectively, one conversation at a time. As a featured contributor for Entrepreneur Magazine, and with her brand new book, Get It! 5 Steps to the Sex, Salary, and Success You Want, AmyK teaches executives, business owners, influencers, and go-getters how to get the exact results they desire without saying something they regret, giving their power away, or damaging relationships along the way. AmyK shares magical phrases with us today to make every conversation intentional. We have a lot of laughs and so many insights. I am so excited for you to listen to our conversation today, so tune in.
Hello, AmyK. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Kimberly, thanks for inviting me.
This is so great. I just love being able to not only meet, and by meet, we'll call it virtual e-meeting here, but also being able to introduce amazing women to my listeners here on Celebrating Simple Life, the podcast. So I'm so grateful to have you here today.
I am blushing, so thank you.
Well, I love this, and I love how we are able to, even amidst a world pandemic, technology connects us everywhere, and I get to be in Canada, and you get to be in the lovely San Diego, and we still get to share our stories and connect in life and business. I love it.
It's the good side of technology, that's for
right?
sure.
Yes, there's so many negatives that I feel like we do have to focus on the positives. I can't imagine having lived through the past however many months and not had the level of technology we had. I can't imagine how isolating life would have felt. So there have been 1,000 of good things that have come from technology, especially recently.
One of the things that I think that is so fun too is that a lot of it, when we talk with other women, they'll talk about, I'm feeling very like either overwhelmed or I'm feeling disconnected. And one of the beautiful things that is kind of really just blossomed out of the pandemic is that I have had more connectivity with girlfriends than I had before when we were all going 90 miles an hour. So as crazy as all the current events have been and as tragic as the current events have been, because we lost a family member as well due to COVID-19, there are some gifts in this bizarre sort of circumstance that we're all experiencing.
Well, and one of these sort of things where none of us have ever, nobody in the world living today has ever probably really experienced this level of world shut down the way that we are having this unique experience collectively. And it's just something that I really think has the opportunity, despite so many hardships about it, has the opportunity for there to be a light of just goodness that comes from us and connection in new ways and just not taking these things for granted. And that has been what I have loved seeing the most about what's been going on in the last year.
No, I'm right there with you. And I certainly just from my own sort of mindset and mindfulness practice really believe that it's a choice. You can't control everything, but you can absolutely control how you want to tell your narrative and your story and craft your narrative and story.
100%. And I think often, especially like strong women, female entrepreneurs, we're living our lives, doing things. And I have been reminded more times than I care to admit in my life when something has gone catastrophic to what I thought was going to go a certain way and then totally going the opposite way, that I cannot control everything. And I pretty much need to get a brick dropped onto my head sometimes in order to be reminded of this, rather than forgetting after something has happened that, once again, I am not in control of what happens, and this is a choice.
That's just the universe just toying with you, Kimberly. That's when the universe is like, ha ha, your plans. You think they're yours, but they're not.
That's exactly how it is. I love it. So you are a master communicator, and I love your slogan of the power of profitable conversations. And so I would love to hear your story and how you got started as an entrepreneur, and just how you've sort of made your way in the world of helping business owners and leaders communicate.
I started off as an elementary school teacher.
No, you did not.
Yes, I did. So I taught 4th and 5th grade for years, and I taught it both here in the contiguous U.S. I taught just outside of Washington, D.C. for several years, and then I taught in our international school system. So I taught in Shanghai, China as well. And one of the things that I believe that is just a huge thread through my entire career is teaching. So I left the elementary school teaching. I became a teacher trainer. Then I became a corporate trainer. Then I started my own training company. Then I became a public speaker, author, consultant. And, here I am a gazillion years later. And if somebody had said when I was 19 years old, oh, you'll be an entrepreneur someday, I would have been like, no, I'm a school teacher. And I come from a family of school teachers and school superintendents and principals. And this is my family. This is like my legacy. And what I didn't realize is that, I was going to do teaching, but I was going to do teaching on steroids. And
right.
It's an entrepreneurial roller coaster. I think that all of our listeners can relate to that. It's never as easy as you think it's going to be. And I always say this, if I'd known how hard it was going to be, I probably wouldn't have done it. But the fact that I was clue-free, Kimberly, was maybe the best gift, is that I had no idea what I didn't know.
Well, you're right. That sometimes is a total gift, because it kind of prevents you from just not taking the step forward and getting started in the first place, along with you just kind of have this notion of anything's possible, which is refreshing at the beginning. And then as you go through hurdles in business over and over and over again, depending on how long someone has been in business, you just are reminded that you can either choose to pivot in a direction of keeping on moving forward, because I'm sure there was many times where you were like, I just want to be back with my little grade 4s. They're just so innocent and easy to please that maybe this whole world of entrepreneurship is overrated.
Oh, I'll tell you, there were some moments. And I think that, though, there's moments for all of us when we have to really ask ourselves, how committed am I? That's one of the questions that I always ask before I go to make a really big decision, is I'll say, okay, how committed am I? If this fails, am I staying on the path? Or if I have a bunch of hurdles, am I still committed to this vision? And that's always very distilling for me, because there are some things where I'm like, well, if it doesn't make any money, I'm not that committed. I'm like, well, then how committed are you? Are you doing this from a place of passion and faith, or are you doing this for the money and the fear? So it's just, to me, that's one of those great questions. But yeah, so I've been a teacher through and through, and I still call myself a teacher to one of these. I coach, I consult, I speak, but at the end of the day, I'm teaching. That's put my ego in check. I'm just a teacher. And when I say just, I mean that with full pride and enthusiasm.
Well, and I can relate right now. Our children are schooling from home this fall, and do you want to know who was not cut out to be a teacher? Yours truly. Because I am considered a mentor. They have their own teacher. I am not homeschooling. They have an online, amazing, fabulous teaching program that they are working through. But I am the face here in the house with them, and it is not for the weak of heart. This was never what I signed up for, of wanting to be in my life. Except, like yourself, I actually taught in Taiwan as well, and in my youth, many, many, many years ago. And teaching, I realized very quickly that is not what I was meant to do in life. But just like those experiences, it pivoted me into recognizing that running my own business and event planning was something I was very passionate about. And that came to me while teaching English and traveling. And so I agree. I think there's so many ways that our past experiences can kind of speak into pointing us in the right direction for the future. So how, as you've pivoted across your teaching platforms from where you started to where you are now, how did helping business owners with tough conversations and teaching them how to communicate in ways that were, I guess, beneficial and getting them further to the places that they wanted to get to, how did you realize that that was something that was a necessary sort of service to be able to speak into the lives of business owners?
I started off when I first switched from being an elementary school teacher and a teacher trainer. My first corporate job was for a beauty company called John Paul Mitchell Systems. And just to put this in context, I don't cut hair, I don't color hair, I know nothing about it. In fact, a ponytail's challenging for me. And at the time, I was assigned to the UK, the London office, to work in the European, Asian, and Australian division to grow sales. And so I really came in as a sales trainer. And my background is in neurology and cognitive science. So I did my grad work on the brain and how we learn. And so what I was trying to do for the beauty company was, if you can train these salon owners, and at that time in the 90s, salon owners were often high school dropouts. So They were super bright, super creative, super smart, but they didn't fit the system. And so it was like, well, then how do we make a system that really maximizes their potential, expands their capacity, and helps them to run a really successful salon? And we were doing it for a very selfish reason, Kimberly. It was because when they would open a salon with no business skills, no entrepreneurial skills, no people skills in terms of running a team, our brand would implode every time the salon closed. So it was in our best interest to set them up for success. And so, and I'm not exaggerating, there's no hyperbole when I say this. So the joy in that job was working with the kindest, most creative people who were not successful, and in a very short period of time, making them wildly successful, both profitably in dollars, their salon being successful, them being considered a much better boss, to their people. So now they're impacting lives, and then their relationships at home would improve. And what I began to notice was everything that we're teaching them has this thread of communication. So when I left that to start my own business, I started a leadership and sales training company. And again, it was like, not, the light bulb didn't go off like so matter of fact one night. It was like, oh my God, everything that we're doing is communication based. Because at that point to me, there were pieces of it that were also systems and operations and culture and finances. But I very quickly after that realized that even those aspects of business were coming back to this fundamental bedrock of, can you communicate this? Can you cast a vision? Can you get people bought in? Can you give a great performance review? Can you get your team aligned? Do you know how to go to market? And all of it came back to one conversation at a time. And so as cheesy as it sounds, Kimberly, I totally believe this. Life is happening one conversation at a time.
I honestly could not agree more with everything you were saying. I love that because I think sometimes we complicate it in our minds, thinking that there must have been 100 other reasons why something did or did not go in a direction that we maybe thought it was going to go, rather than just taking a step back and realizing exactly what you just said, that it is one conversation at a time. So what would you say then as you are teaching and communicating with your clients and customers and places that you're speaking about this, how do you begin to start helping others understand kind of what makes a good leader and how to, I guess, put ourselves into the awareness space of being more emotionally intelligent and self-aware and learning how to have better conversations?
Well, it's a practice. So one of the things that I'm the first to admit is that we were all given a voice box and it didn't come with instructions. So I've learned the hard way. And I'm very transparent when I say that because, people show up and like, oh my gosh, you're so good at communicating. And I'm like, okay, well, first of all, I'm knocking on the door of 49 and I've been doing this for a really long time. And I will tell you that I learned it the hard way. I learned it when I didn't know what to say or when I said the wrong thing and when I gave my power away or I didn't set a boundary. And those were the times when you look back and you self-reflect and you go, somebody else is doing this and they're doing it a lot more effectively than I am. So what can I learn? Or how does that make me feel? And so one of the things that I spend most of my time with my coaching clients, and these are wildly successful entrepreneurs, CEOs of big name companies, we take it one conversation at a time. And we literally slow down and do that deep breath of, what do you want out of this conversation? How do we do the law of reciprocity so that somebody else gets what they want? How do we co-create a better future so that we honor and dignify the significance of everyone's worth and the worth of their own voice? You know, how do we honor and give dignity to somebody's experience? How do we frame that conversation? How do we start that conversation? How do we close that conversation? And it's amazing to me that all of that can actually be done in like 7 minutes. And so it's not a huge like, oh, we're going to sit down for 90 minutes and plan for this 5-minute conversation. It's we're going to take 5 minutes for you to show up either in front of your team or a difficult client or a prospect or whatever. And sometimes it's so funny because I don't even have a therapy degree, but I cannot tell you, Kimberly, the number of times things get personal fast after a few coaching calls. And we talk about that. We talk about it because life, you know, it's really kind of funny. It sounds so simplistic, but you, my dear, celebrating the simple life will appreciate this. I believe fundamentally that if life is happening one conversation at a time, then the quality of your life is a direct reflection of the quality of your conversations. And I say wholeheartedly that the life that you desire is on the other side of a tough conversation.
Right. Say that again. I mean, I love that.
Just the life that you want is on the other side of a tough conversation. And so when you can take that tough conversation and you navigate it successfully, you're going to get the profitable life that you desire. When I say profitable, I mean time, energy, relationships healed, boundaries established. I'm not talking just dollars. I'm talking about your entire life. And it sounds very straightforward because it is, but it is a practice. And so it's interesting because whether it's a conversation that I have with Scott's girls, so I've been in a long-term relationship. The children are not mine biologically. And these are girls that I met them in middle school and now they're off to college. And it's one of those things where some of those hardest conversations, you're like, okay, I have to show up. I have to be present. I have to prepare. I have to have a couple of magical phrases in my back pocket. And then the rest is faith that you will show up out of love and compassion.
Oh, I love that. I am raising 2 girls as well. And I just think, like, I never grew up having a sister. So I feel like even just communicating with my daughters as sisters and as women and as the women that I desire for them to be able to confidently grow up to be, I love what you're saying because I think so often, whether it's business conversations, whether it is like relationships, parent-child, significant other, maybe, it does often feel, especially as life goes on, that conversations get harder and harder and things can get more complicated and situations and circumstances can feel like there's added stress to life. And it's easy to just feel like you want to throw in the towel on having those hard conversations, thinking that everything is always going to feel a certain way. So I feel like what you're saying is very, very exciting and hopeful at the potential if there is listeners listening, and I can think of specific examples in my own life of personal life and business where I wished that I had been able to handle certain conversations differently and you just want like a redo.
Oh, me too. Oh, my gosh. I mean, that's called human. I mean, hello. Everybody listening, raise your hand who's had a conversation you'd like to redo in the last 12 months, right?
Totally. I mean, and if you're not raising your hand, just hang up right now because this is not
Seriously. You're an alien life form. I think that, you know, one of the things, though, that's so important for us as women is that I've noticed, and this is my experience, so I'm going to just speak from my own experience. I've noticed throughout my career that women tend to over-apologize. And so one of the things that happens is we go into a tough conversation and our throats will get tight or our chests will tighten or our eyes will start to water and we'll be like, oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. And we get so embarrassed or shame-filled on our own body's reaction that we actually increase the reaction rather than negating it. And so one of the things that I've learned is to just tell somebody, hold. And what I do is I tell myself internally while I'm getting control of myself, I care about this. Clearly I care about this, right? This is important to me. This matters to me. So thank you, body, for reminding me that this is important. And then the first words out of my mouth are, as you can see, this matters to me. And that's a game changer. That's just like, I'm a huge curator of magical phrases. That's a big one for me. Clearly, this matters to me. Because what you do is you don't apologize. So like, say if I showed up to you and let's just say I said something egregious to you last week, and I felt like when I got here I owed you an apology. Let's just say I was embarrassed about my behavior last week. When I go to apologize, like if my throat constricts or I get all red in the face or I start to cry, and the cry is because I care. Like I want this to go well, right? This matters to me. So instead of apologizing, to just say, okay, hold, Kimberly, and I gather my thoughts, and my thoughts are, clearly I care. Okay, body, thank you so much. This is important to me. Then the first words out of my mouth are, Kimberly, clearly this matters to me. And that just shifts the whole tone and tenor of the conversation.
That is a magical phrase. Like, listen, you are speaking to the choir here because us Canadians are known for our apologies. We are known for being very
kind
and apologetic and sorry, I bumped into you. Sorry, I looked at you the wrong way. Like, sorry. And I think naturally as women, no matter where anyone is from, I do feel like that's what I see coming up a lot more. We naturally, most of us at least, seem to have this tendency towards assuming that something has been our fault when maybe it might not be, but we want to make sure that we're not upsetting anybody and we want to tread softly and all of that. And like yourself, I very much have, I like to talk. I like to have conversations, and I will speak for myself. I've put my foot in my mouth more times than I can count on certain things because I'm not afraid to speak out, which has been a very positive and has had some very negative situations happen in my life because of it. But I love your magical phrases. That is magical.
Well, I think that, so for me, I'm a very out there. I tend to process out loud. I tend to respond thoughtfully most of the time, but like all humans, I will react on occasion. Or sometimes the words that leave my mouth did not align with my brain. And so there are times when like these words, and you see them hanging in the air, and you're like, that's just wrong. But here's what's great. At my age now, I just say that. I'm like, oh, no, I just lied. That's not what I meant to say. And I didn't really lie. Yes. Like, I didn't do it with intent. But It would be something like if I said, so yesterday I was at a park, and I'm like, no, Kimberly, wait, I just lied. What I meant was Tuesday when I was at the restaurant, because it's like, I don't know what my brain just did or where it went. But here's the fun thing. The sooner that you own it and you restate what you meant to say, people are with you. What hangs in the air is that icky, I've been called to the principal's office, sickness in your stomach when you realize that you've done something and you don't correct it. And then 24 hours later, you're still noodling on it. It's still eating you from the inside. And then by the time that you go to correct it, it's bigger than it needed to be. And so
true.
And sometimes I'll even call the kids on it. Every now and then, like Julia will say something. I'm like, are those the words you meant to say? Because it's like totally inappropriate, right? Or just totally lip, right? Because they're all teenagers. And she'll be like, no, apparently it wasn't. I was like, great, so try again. But this is about being playful with it too and not taking ourselves so seriously.
I'll get back to the show in 20 seconds, but I wanted you to be the first to know about the new event I've created just for you. The Curated Content Social is a networking photo shoot that simplifies the content that you need to show up authentically on your social media. Imagine gathering together with a dozen amazing business owners to connect, grow, and learn more about each other's businesses while having a fun night out. And it's all photographed. This event only happens once a month and tickets sell out fast. This is all about helping you to create an abundant mindset to thrive in business and show up just as you are. To join in the fun, visit celebratingsimplelife.com to save your spot or connect with Celebrating Simple Life on Instagram. All right, friend, back to the show.
Well, and that's so true. And I think you're absolutely right in saying that this is a practice because this isn't, whether somebody feels like maybe naturally they have more communication style skills or self-awareness, like everybody is just at a different level, but I think everybody can practice to be better. And I think I don't remember this ever being something that was spoken about or talked about at all when I was growing up. And it wasn't really until I was an adult and realized that this was something that had to be practiced, where I wish that I had had many more years, the way that I hope that I'm able to be talking with my kids about this now, so that this can become something where they can say, hey, I've actually been practicing this since I could speak.
Well, and that's actually, you bring up a really great point. So when we were in high school, you could take a public speaking class, presentation skills, public speaking. When you go to college, you can do the same, or you can take communications, but communications is usually marketing and PR. There's no class that says, here's how you talk inside a healthy relationship. Here's how you talk in healthy team dynamics. And so what's fascinating is we learn by trial and error. And then what's also, it's the paradox of, it's so sad and yet it's so great, is that when couples or individuals choose to go to therapy, what they're actually doing is learning how to communicate with themselves, me, myself, and I, internally, my mindset, and I'm learning how to communicate with others. That's what therapy is. It's just learning how to communicate, and it's learning how to talk about the tough stuff, the emotions. It's expanding your emotional literacy. And so one of the things, to pull this full stop, is that the most successful entrepreneurs, the most successful leaders that I have had the privilege of working with over the years are those who are high EQ, meaning that they're very self-aware, they know what it means to have empathy for another, they know what it means to have interpersonal communication skills, and they're also very good at then articulating their vision and harnessing people around it to get bought in, so that all of us feel like we're contributing in this purposeful, pleasurable vision of having this significant impact in the future. Like, those are the two differentiators I see all the time. Your ability to communicate at that interpersonal level and really have empathy for another, and then your ability to say, hey, I have this vision, and it's so persuasive and compelling, and Kimberly, I can't do it without you. So come help me make this incredibly significant future for others. Those are the two things that just by and far blow it out of the water.
That is incredible. So what, besides, like, I love how you brought up these magical phrases and ways that, because I think some, like you just said, like, sometimes we just overcomplicate this, and it is actually simpler than it is. So what would be some other either phrases or, I guess, techniques or exercises that somebody who's listening today could try to say, listen, maybe I am recognizing about myself that I maybe am not as emotionally intelligent or self-aware. Maybe a situation has come up, or they got a really negative email from somebody, or had a conversation that just felt uncomfortable and they weren't quite sure how to respond or handle it, and it turned into a bit of a situation rather than something that felt like it was easy to address. What would be something that you can kind of do to start increasing and strengthening that emotional awareness about yourself in order to make these conversations easier?
I am a curator of magical phrases, and I have quite a few what I call the brilliant back pocket one-liners that I've just collected over the years. And the reason that I collect them is because, well, I'm not a fan of scripting. Like, we do sales training. We've done sales training for almost 3 decades. I don't believe in scripting. I think scripting just makes you sound robotic, and it removes you from actively listening. That said, the magical phrase can completely transform a conversation. So one of the ones that we've been talking about right now a lot in the pandemic, while people are feeling out of control, and it works really well both personally and professionally, is the magical phrase, would you be willing? And then you fill in the blank with what it is that you want them to do. Would you be willing is a way of giving somebody control in a world where we're feeling very out of control. So if I say, Kimberly, would you be willing to complete draft 1 by Tuesday? Or Kimberly, would you be willing to write or take lead on this first 5 steps? Would you be willing to do X? It works very well with your kids at home. Would you be willing to set the table, walk the dog, or unload the dishwasher? Now, notice what I did. I just gave my child 3 choices. They're not going to get out of chores, but they're going to get some control over what it is that they're going to choose to do, which makes them so much more engaged and willing to do it. Now, I'm not going to say to you that they're going to show up like, Pollyanna, super excited to unload the dishwasher, but just by saying to a teenager or a young, like 8, 7, 8, it actually works really young too with 4 and 5-year-olds, but you tend to only do like 2 choices. You don't give them 3 or 4. That's too complicated when they're really little. It would be like, would you like to make your bed, or would you like to pick up your toys? But the would you be willing gives them a chance to say yes. of their own accord. Now, if you're in pushback and they're like, no, I wouldn't be willing, then you just followed up with, what would you be willing to do? And it just gives them a sense of control. So that's one that I've used a lot lately. The other one that I think is really important, and this is just a ubiquitously awesome magical phrase, and that is a part of me. And when you are sharing a negative emotion and you say it as 100%, it shuts down a conversation. So if I say, Kimberly, I'm angry, I'm disappointed, I'm frustrated, it sounds from your perspective like that's all AmyK is feeling. So,
right.
So if AmyK is 100% frustrated or 100% angry, then game on, because you're not giving me any wiggle room,
right.
and I'm going to get defensive, right?
Yeah.
But if I say to you, Kimberly, a part of me is frustrated, then I leave all this space for other emotions, including love and respect. And it can be just as simple as, a part of me is disappointed that you broke your curfew. A part of me was really worried because I sat up an extra hour wondering where you are. And a part of me is actually angry that you broke this contract that we have. So we're going to talk about it tomorrow, right? I can't talk about it tonight because I'm so upset. You could do it at work. You could say, a part of me is disappointed that you missed the deadline. But you're not saying you're awful, you're terrible, you're a lousy person. What you're saying is a part of me is processing this emotion, other emotions too. But it is such a beautiful phrase when you're trying to resolve conflict.
I love that, because I know there's been a lot of times when I think about conversations in business and even conversations with my girls where they obviously, like any human being, are sensitive, and nobody likes to be called out on something that you maybe have disappointed somebody else in. And I can definitely, there's like situations that are flashing through my mind right now of thinking of times where I've probably expressed disappointment or frustration or a reaction that maybe was not as appropriate in a situation. It could have been handled differently. And immediately my youngest daughter, who's quite sensitive about things, thinks that she's an awful person. She relates it to her whole entire being. I can see her shoulders curl in and shut down, and me being disappointed about a certain situation has now in her world enveloped every single core about herself and everything she's ever done, and all of the things that she thought she was really good at are now also everything's bad. Just from a one-time conversation of my reaction not being what it probably could have been. And then I feel horrible. She feels horrible. Nobody's winning.
Well, and so that's another great magical phrase. This one that comes from my friend Susan, so I cannot take credit for this one. I give Susan 100% credit for it. But she says, you deserve to be happy. I deserve to be happy. This does not feel happy. This does not feel good. So what are we going to do to feel better or to feel happier? And so a modified version is, you deserve to feel good. I deserve to feel good. This doesn't feel good. What are we going to do to make it feel good? And so that's a great way of like course correcting. So like the next time you react, understand that it's human. So I always say, look, your reaction doesn't define you, but your final response does, or your next response does.
Right. And
so it's kind of like you can lose your temper, you can have something happen, but then you have to decide, okay, now who am I? Like that was human, but now who am I? Who do I want to be in this world? And that's when you could go to your daughter or a colleague and say, hey, look, yesterday I overreacted. I apologize. And then you start the conversation over. And that's one of the things that I think that's really this conundrum, and we've talked about it, is that we sometimes say sorry for silly things like, instead of saying excuse me or hey, wow, our energy apparently is magnetic because we keep bumping into each other and laughing it off, we're like, oh, I'm sorry. Then there are times when we really do need to apologize. And it's hard for us to just go in without being defensive and without explaining it away, because then it's not an apology. So the minute that I show up and I say, hey, Kimberly, I'm really sorry I lost my temper yesterday, you just have no idea how stressed I was. That's not an apology. That's not an apology. That's an excuse. You didn't know. You didn't know how stressed I was. And then you're sort of like, so now not only have I really not authentically apologized, I've put the burden on you of knowing where I am in my stress levels. We say in the professional world, that's bullshit. So, you know, what I believe in is you show up and you apologize without being defensive. And so there's a lot of things that we do. Now I'm on a tangent, but I think that when we are being told that something that we did was wrong in the eyes of somebody else, it is a natural and understandable thing to defend ourselves. So if you came to me, if we reverse this and you said, well, yesterday you overreacted, instead of saying, it sounds like from your perspective, I was too loud or too whatever, did I get that right? And you say yes. And you say, so you sound like you were hurt, and you're like, I was. And then I go, I apologize for hurting you. I sincerely apologize. That is a healthy conversation. What most of us do is say, well, Kimberly, I was really stressed yesterday. I'm sorry, but I was really stressed. That's not an apology.
I love that you said this.
And there's a big difference.
There is. I love that you said this because you're absolutely right. This is a misunderstanding a lot of the time. I have been doing so much research in the last couple of years on exactly like apologizing and forgiveness and I don't know, I think partially too, just especially like raising, like in my business, I almost feel more confident about it. But in raising kids, you want to make sure that everybody is heard. And I mean, I guess it kind of mimics itself in business a little bit too, but I love that you addressed the fact that it's almost like when you are having these big conversations, we need to look at them and break them up into easy to digest snippets versus thinking that the apology or the first, I guess, your reaction to something, and then whether you need space and time to just like let it be processed prior to coming back with an apology and feeling like you're ready to actually have the apology is a bit of a separate discussion even than resolving said issue. Because you're right.
You
the apology,
just nailed it.
Right? It like floats right into this. And I will like, from a partner perspective, this is like an epic disaster all the time between my partner and I, where one person says one thing, what the other person gets defensive and misunderstands, and then you kind of want to get to the bottom of it because you live under the same roof and you don't want things to feel tense, but then you kind of lead an apology which turns into World War III yet again, and you're back to ground zero because you just can't really wrap your head around hearing out each other's feelings because you're still kind of caught up in the apology leading to a resolve rather than just, I'm sorry, period, no but.
Well, and that's because what we end up doing is a defensive game. So, you know, you say you overreacted. I say, well, you were rude. And then you say, well, you overreact all the time. And then I say, well, you're rude all the time. And so what happens is nobody's really listening and nobody feels heard. Nobody feels understood because everybody's so busy arguing their own point. And so there are times, and I've learned this the hard way. So let's just be transparent. I was married and divorced. So, but now years later, what I look back and I realize is that it's so important that you separate the conversation. So instead of making it about the other person, when they're making it about you, is you finish that conversation. You don't detract. So if somebody comes to me and says, you know, you were difficult yesterday, and again, we're making stuff up, but you were difficult yesterday, then you stay with that. You don't deflect and say, well, you were difficult yesterday. You say, tell me more about that. What did I do? And what you do is you mirror and you validate and you empathize and you apologize if you need to. And then you save the next conversation for a separate conversation. So we don't go back and forth yelling at each other about all of our, less than wonderful traits in the same conversation because nobody's going to listen. And that is a skill we do not teach people. You literally have to learn that skill by taking a relationship class or going to therapy. And the reason that I bring it up is because I know that we're talking about entrepreneurship as well, but this happens in the workplace. Yeah. Business partners do the same thing. You do it with your direct reports. You do it with your colleagues. Sometimes you end up doing it with your customers. Nobody wins in that type of a communication pattern.
100%. Well, and I think, too, that leads right into the whole conversation of determining, like, your own, like, when a complicated situation like pops itself up. I know for myself, I've definitely, as I've gotten older, become a lot more confident in my ability to process, deal with it, rather than letting it ruin the whole rest of my week. But it's still something that takes time to process. And I think for women, being able to set boundaries in our life and our business, and when something comes up that feels uncomfortable, and figuring out how to navigate our way through those tough conversations, and knowing that sometimes they are able to be resolved and it can be sort of a super simple fix. And other times you can kind of get to a bit of a resolve, but maybe there's just certain like relationships or experiences or things that maybe just aren't meant to be a part of our lives. What would you speak into that from a business relationship and even, I guess, personal relationship perspective as to how do we determine what our boundaries are in, I guess, the way people in our life speak to us, and when it's a pattern of things kind of always going a certain way, how do we navigate that and sort of be able to hold on to our own and recognize what is and isn't okay for ourselves?
There's a lot of things to unpack in that. I think the first thing that I would say is no thank you is a complete sentence. And so the first thing is when you draw a boundary is you don't have to explain, you don't have to justify, again, you don't have to apologize. But women, we get ourselves into these fixes because I'll say, oh, Kimberly, I wish I could, but I can't. Or now's not a good time. And all I end up doing is setting myself up because you end up coming back and saying, well, when would be a good time? And, oh, if you feel that much, how about just writing a check, you know? And so no thank you is a complete sentence. The other thing that I did years ago is I just removed myself from the busy trap. There's such this comparative sense with women of the number of meetings that you volunteer for, the number of things that you're doing inside the classroom or now at home, the number of groups that you participate in nightly activities. I mean, I have watched women literally do the comparison dance of I'm busier than you. And I was just like, you guys go for it, because that is not one I even want to win, and it doesn't bring me any joy. And so I get really good at saying no to stuff. In fact, I'm probably off of more committees now than I've ever been in my life just because it wasn't bringing me happiness. So that talks about boundaries. Now, I'll give you a vulnerable story, because this is just a great way where we have to practice it. I was invited to speak, and that's what I do for a living. Like, speaking is what, speaking, coaching, consulting, that's what keeps my lights on and my team paid, but I do speak for free. And if you've got a nonprofit, something that I think is really important and worthy, I will occasionally speak for free. Like in the pandemic, the National Association of Mental Illness was like, would you do a webinar? I was like, absolutely, because it's the right thing to do as determined by my values. And that's where I'm going with this. I think when you get really clear on what drives you, what your values are, then you don't end up doing things because it's the right thing to do or it's the principle of the thing. You end up doing it simply because it's aligned with your own sense of integrity. Like, how do you live and choose your life? So I was invited to speak for free, and I agreed. And then they said, but you have to, and this was after I said yes, and will you speak? They said, but you have to pay our membership fee. And I said, what? And they're like, yeah, you can't speak unless you pay our membership fee. I was like, I'm speaking for free. Like, I'm not charging you. Like, and this is the kicker. It was only $47, right? and so I said, I'm not charging you $15,000, but you want me to pay $47 for the privilege of doing all this work and showing up and and speaking for you guys. Like, this is a hotel and airplane and the speaking. I'm like, and I'm willing to do it because it's women. I wanted to support women. Yes. But this is the irony. They wanted me to pay their $47. Right. And that's when I said no. And the CEO wrote me what a horrible, nasty person I was. And those are the things where you just realize, and this is important, because I started to feel horrible and nasty. I started to second guess. And then I was like, whoa, no, wait a minute. I was willing to fly and pay for all these things and speak for free. And they're promoting women and want me to speak about promoting women, but they won't cover $47? That's not supporting women. That's not supporting women. And so that's one of the stories where and the reason that I'm sharing it is because I went to the dark side. I went to am I a horrible person? Am I a horrible person? And I think that's, as women, what we have to do is we have to constantly check the stories in our head so that we can get better at setting boundaries in our life. Like, who are we really trying to please? And what do we think is going to happen if we say no and we draw a boundary? And does that make me feel better as my own self-integrity and my own self-worth? And so I know this is a huge, huge beast of a topic, but I really do believe that when women set boundaries based on our own sense, our own moral compass of our values and how we want to go through the world, we feel a whole heck of a lot better.
Totally. Well, and you're absolutely right, because it almost then gives us the ability to take the difficultness of making a decision out of the equation, because it should our intuition and our feelings towards something should just kind of direct it if we feel so clearly about what is important to us. It should sort of, I mean, there's sure some things that maybe come up in a bit of a gray area that feel like it's a little bit more challenging to navigate, but you're absolutely right. That kind of does need to be the very first step in order to feeling confident about moving forward. And I appreciate you sharing that story so vulnerably, because I think that it's hard sometimes to feel like we're able to kind of share specific examples that have gone on in our own lives. But to me, that just feels like so relatable for listeners today listening to whatever is going on in their lives, to know that all of us are experiencing good, bad, and ugly of life all at the same time, every single day. Nobody is immune to the fact that there are going to be really great experiences and incredible hardships in life, no matter what our stories are. And I appreciate you being so transparent about your own journey.
Well, I think that we all know that life is messy, life is quirky, life is hard. And anybody that's telling you that, life is an easy breeze, either they're totally on something higher than we can possibly, or, go follow them, because they're a guru worth following. But from my own personal experience and from all of my friends, I can tell you life is messy, life is quirky, and life is hard. And that doesn't mean it's hard and messy and quirky every day. I mean, obviously, I love what I'm doing and I love my life, and life is still messy, quirky, and hard.
Oh, absolutely. Which leads me to your book, Get It. So, Get the Life You Desire. I love that your title is just Get It. Just like period, get it. Because I think, like you said before, no thank you is a complete sentence. I love that you are putting out there, just simplifying the fact that it takes one conversation at a time to get what you want and where you want to go out of life. So how did you decide to put this down on paper and actually get a book out there with your message?
I have spent so many coaching calls dealing with a specific conversation. So whether it was a CEO who then would be like, hey, AmyK, can I have 5 minutes of your time? And I was like, oh, here we go. It's going personal. Sure enough, it was about his marriage. I've been working with a gentleman, a wildly successful CEO of residential properties, and he literally called me just last week, true story, just last week, and he said, can I talk to you about my son? And I was like, yep, here we go. And so the book is both a professional and a personal take on getting what you want, whatever that is. And I'm not talking about, the Maserati in the front circular driveway of the 10,000 square foot house, unless that's really what you want. But it's about whether you want world peace or just a better relationship with your kids or your spouse. Mm-hmm. The Get It book is about taking it one conversation at a time. So the most fun thing in there is that there really are frameworks for conversations, tough conversations, fabulous ways to ask questions, and it's filled with magical phrases. So I still get emails from people from around the world that will be like, I love these magical phrases. I used them last night. You would not believe what happened. I'm like, no, I do believe it because they're magical.
Yeah. That is so amazing, because I feel like what you're saying is you have been able to kind of pick all of the juicy little nuggets that you would be able to, it's sort of almost giving people the opportunity to have like a one-on-one coaching session, but they have to just put in the effort and read the book.
Yes, and you know what's so fun is that everybody says, I write like I speak. So it's not it's very irreverent. So if you want to laugh out loud, if you want to be provoked and be like, oh, wow, she hit me right between the eyes on that one. Or if you want to, if you want a little teary-eyed moment, like it's all in there because it's just me being me. And so even like when we went to the publisher, the editor was so funny. They're like, I feel like I'm having a cocktail with you when I read this book. I was like, yes, I'll take it as a compliment.
I love that. So then you've nailed it when you get a compliment like that. I love that because isn't that always the case though? When you see like somebody like such as yourself, when you show up on social media or in the world or speaking engagements and people seeing a certain side of you, it's always nice to feel like this is the real side. This is just what it is. This isn't I'm speaking to you so you're getting this, and if we were actually having cocktails, you're getting this. This is all one and the same because you are trying to get the life you desire by helping others get the life they desire.
Yes. I mean, it is the ultimate self-help book because I wrote what I needed.
Yeah. Well, I love that you say that because isn't that always the case? I have had this thought come to mind so often in my life where sometimes where we wish maybe that there's certain traits or qualities, the more emotionally intelligent and self-aware I think we get about ourselves and all of the good, bad, and ugly flaws sort of rear their heads and show themselves, and you're becoming more aware of where are areas that you could be better. It's almost like those things then start showing up even more. So I say to myself, oh man, patience is just a virtue of mine that I just wish that I could just tackle a little bit harder. Why am I so impatient? And literally within moments, some type of irritating, impatient scenario will like flash its way across my world and the day following. And I'm like, oh, right. You have to actually feel impatience in order to learn how to feel patient. You have to work on those things first.
That universe is toying with you again,
Kimberly. It is. Am I being punked over here? Yeah, totally. I love that. Well, I love this. So what I want to finish up the interview, I feel like we could probably have like a 10-part episode here because this is powerful topic. And I am definitely going to be digging in deeper and further and rereading the chapters of your book because I feel like no matter what stage of life you're in, I would think that you're just always going to get something different out of being emotionally intelligent and self-aware for whatever stage of life and stage of business one might be in.
Absolutely. And in fact, I've even gone back to some of my favorite self-help books and 10 or 12 years later, you're sort of like, you're looking at your past exercises and you're like, wow, so that's where I was. Yeah, I'm so not there anymore. Here's my new answer.
Yeah. Oh, I
That's
love
great.
that.
That's good.
That's so true. So I want to hear some fun aspects about your life and have my listeners get to know AmyK a little bit better before we finish up today. So I have a few fun speed questions so that we can hear about you. So what is one thing that you do in the morning that sets the tone for your day?
I toast. So I toast to the day. It's a solitary activity, but I toast. I toast with my coffee, and I always say my mantra, which is, I surrender. I am captivatingly radiant energy, making a positive impact. I let go and let the universe deliver my desires. Miracles happen. And I do it every morning.
I could cry. That is so beautiful. I have never, ever heard somebody say that before.
Oh, wow. Okay, well, I toast to the day.
Well, I'm all about toasts and cheers and parties and planning and all of that. So this is like speaking my language. That is such a great, beautiful way to start the day. Love it. So you toast with your coffee. What is your coffee order?
Decaf with cream. I like a little coffee with my cream.
I love that. I hope someday that I enjoy drinking decaf. For now, I need the full steam ahead in order to keep up with the days of life. What is one thing that you always have in your purse for day to day or something that you just like can't travel without?
This is even pre-pandemic. Sanitizing hand wipes. Like, I am the queen of hand wipes before hand wipes were even sold out.
Yes. I love that. I'm like the person that's like wiping down the airplane arms and seats and like restaurant benches before we all enjoy ourselves, even pre-pandemic. So this pandemic has actually been a blessing. It's like everyone else is catching up now.
Exactly. That's how I
love
feel.
It. What is your favorite junk food that you treat yourself with?
Oh, salty chips. Like just good, thick, awesome potato chips.
Oh, classic. So what was the very first concert or most memorable concert you've ever attended?
Ooh, I'm going to go with most memorable. I saw Sting perform in London. And
what?
It was brilliant. Yes.
Because where else would you ever need to see Sting besides right in London?
It was amazing. Yeah, it gives me goosebumps just like reminiscing about it right now.
Oh, I love, especially right now as we're all like clawing at the walls, waiting for like travel to become back to regular, and where are we going to jet off to next? That's amazing. What is one thing that you absolutely love to do in your free time?
Hike the coast. So I'm from San Diego, and whenever I get a chance to go walk on the beach or walk on the cliffs, I do it.
That is fabulous. Before we jumped on here today, I was telling you how brilliant I feel San Diego is. I just love it there. I felt like in San Diego, it was like you could experience like 4 different like climates and cities in one city. Like all of a sudden you're like Old Town. All of a sudden it feels quite like urban. And then it's harbor. And then it's like beautiful sandy beaches. And I'm like, how is this all happening in one amazing area?
We are so blessed to be here. I do not take it for granted. I really do. I feel so blessed to be in this part of the world. It's a beautiful spot.
Gorgeous. So where is your favorite travel destination that you have been to, or a place that you're hoping to get to next?
This is a really hard one. This is probably the hardest of all the questions, because I've traveled all over the world. I'm just a huge fan of travel in and of itself. But I would have to say that right now, Spain is on the list. We were going to be in Barcelona, which I've never been, but we got hit by the pandemic, and
yes,
of course all that crazy circus happened. But if I had to go back where I repeatedly go and just never get tired of it, it's just about anywhere in France or Italy or the UK. Like I just go back over again, because it's just a special part of the world.
Isn't it? I have traveled a lot as well and have never yet been to Europe. How is it even possible? So that is for sure number 1 on my list as well. That sounds amazing. So when you have a free day and you get to do whatever AmyK wants to do, what is included in a perfect day for you?
I would say 2 absolutes would be no agenda, just because our lives are so busy.
Yes.
So no agenda would make for the perfect day. Obviously a hike on the coast. And then one of my favorite things to do is a dinner party. So just having, 6 people around a table filled with fellowship and incredible wines and food, like that to me is just the ultimate sublime moment. So if I could have the beautiful dinner party with a couple other people and fabulous food and wine, I'm a happy camper.
You are speaking my language. Like, honestly, I love a good party, and a small dinner party is my favorite too. Well, I hope that in the near future, when the world resumes in some capacity that we are used to, someday perhaps we will be sitting around and having a dinner party together rather than just meeting virtually over the phone.
I would love that. Oh my God, I would love that.
Right? Oh, well, this has been absolutely inspiring conversation. Thank you so much for being on the show today and for just sharing just your incredible gifts of communication with us today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a true pleasure to be a part of your sandbox for this hour and to share in this kind of incredibly fun and energetic dialogue. It's a gift in the middle of everything we're all going through. So thank you.
Thank you.
Celebrating Simple Life, the podcast, is a proud member of the Saskatchewan Podcast Network, which is supported by Connexus. Does money spark joy in your life or cause you stress? If you said stress, you're not alone. For 42% of Canadians, their biggest stressor comes from money. At Connexus, they care about your financial well-being. Money doesn't have to be stressful, and Connexus is here to help. The Connexus Money Talk blog provides expert advice, tips, and solutions for all life stages and events. Getting married, buying a house, budgeting, saving, they cover it all and more. And did I mention it's free? Check it out today at connexusmoneytalk.ca and start feeling confident and stress-free about your money. This show would not be possible without you, my incredible listeners. It would mean the world to me if you would subscribe to Celebrating Simple Life on Apple Podcasts or download and listen on Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you choose to listen. If you really want to make my day, leave a review. These reviews, ratings, and sharing screenshots of podcast episodes that were engaging for you on your Instagram stories and tagging friends that you think should hear the episode too really helps the podcast grow. It makes me so happy that I often select reviews to read on the show, and if yours is chosen, you will receive a special gift from me. Thank you for being a part of my mission to connect stories of business and life. Cheers to Celebrating Simple Life.